What's up everybody, Rob here from Sage Tower Games, and it has finally arrived. The Galaxy's Most Wanted, Marvel's newest campaign expansion for Marvel Champions. And with it, we are taking a step away from the Avengers and going to the Guardians of the Galaxy. With this campaign expansion, we got two new heroes, Groot and Raccoon. In my other video, you may have seen the Raccoon review. This video, we'll be taking a look at everyone's favorite tree, Groot. So without further ado, let's hop into Groot's cards. I'll be popping them up on the screen for you as I go through them myself in person. So let's take a peek. Okay. Groot in alter ego form is an outlaw. 10 hit points. I would have expected a bit more health on Groot, but I think the way you're supposed to play Groot may be the reason for this. So, for recovery, pretty strong. Action, place 2 growth counters on Groot to a maximum of 10, limit once per round. So Groot's main gimmick is to get these growth counters, which he'll use for a bunch of different abilities and things. In his hero form, he's got 1 thwart, 2 attack, 3 defense. That's a pretty solid stat line. I believe that's the Spider-Man stat line. And he has an ability, Floor Colossus. It's a forced interrupt, so it has to happen. When Groot would take any amount of damage, remove that many growth counters from him. For each growth counter removed that way, prevent 1 of that damage. So as he gets these counters, he can use them to soak up damage. So essentially, with the counters, he can go up to 20 health technically. So he can pretty much stay sturdy. And this is a force, so it has to happen if Groot takes damage. So, how do we get growth counters? Well, simple enough. We got 2 copies of Fruition, 0 cost card, place 2 growth counters on Groot. There you go. We have 2 copies of I Am Groot, which is a 3 cost event. Remove threat from a scheme equal to the number of growth counters on Groot. So 3 for 3 for 3, 3 for 6, technically even 3 for 10 if you get that high. So you can take off a bunch of threat with this 1 card. Then we have I Am Groot, which is different because this one has punctuation. This is a 2 cost event. Deal damage to an enemy equal to the number of counters on Groot. So that could be 2 for 4, again 2 for 6, 2 for 10. So that's a ton of damage that this card can potentially pump out. So, and it says enemy is not restricted by minion or anything, so it can do, technically if you have 10 counters on Groot, you can go 2 for 10 on him, no problem. On the villain. We have 3 copies of Root Stomp. It's a 2 cost event. Deal 5 damage to an enemy. If this attack defeats the enemy, place 1 growth counter on Groot. So defeat a minion, which 5 should defeat most minions in the game at this point. There are some harder ones, but 5 is pretty good. So you help clear the board a little bit, and you gain a counter in return. Then we have We Are Groot, which is a 1 cost event. Remove up to 4 growth counters from Groot. Choose that many friendly characters. Give each of them a tough status card. That's really good. So on like a 2-player game, you spend 1 to essentially give you both a tough status for 2 counters. I do want to make a note because I believe it is in the FAQ, so people don't overlook it. The tough status card overrides the interrupt or supersedes it. So what I mean by this is if you have tough on Groot, the tough will absorb the attack before anything else happens to Groot. so you don't lose any counters on Groot because you have the tough status card. So that's essentially a way for you to not have to worry about dealing with damage and still keep your growth counters. Probably even just to play on yourself, just to give yourself that one action, that one tough status to kind of hoard your growth counters is probably worth it. Fertile Ground is a one action support. Alter Ego action, exhaust Fertile Ground, place one growth counter on Groot, and draw one card. So right here you see some pretty insane things. Say you're playing Groot, you're in hero form, and you have 0 counters. You flip to Alter Ego, you use your ability, now you have 2 counters, you exhaust Fertile Ground, 3 counters. Next turn, you use your ability again, 5. You exhaust Fertile Ground, 6. And then you can flip back up to hero next turn and have 6 counters on you, just like that. So you can get pretty quickly up your counters, and my guess is he's gonna probably be in that 4 to 8 range, probably, if I had to guess. And then eventually either spike up to 10, or if you're struggling, go down to like 0 and 2. But what do we spend these counters on? Well, Entangling Vines, superpower. When Groot makes a basic thwart, remove 1 counter and exhaust. He gets +2 thwart for that thwart, so that makes him a 3. We have Lashing Vines. After Groot uses a basic power, remove 2 counters from him and exhaust Lashing Vines to ready Groot. So 1 card boosts his thwart, this card lets him ready. And sure enough, Vine Shield, 1 cost upgrade, remove when Groot defends against an attack, remove 1 counter and exhaust to gain +3 defense. That makes him a 6 defense, which is pretty beefy. He can probably soak up most hits at that point, depending on what the villain is. So, and then Vine Spikes, remove 1 counter and exhaust Vine Spikes to get +2 attack. So you're looking at like a 3, 4, 6 potentially, depending on, obviously not all at once, but he has the ability to spike all his numbers up and to ready himself. Or you could hoard all the counters to drop those big I Am Groot cards if you need to. So many different ways to play Groot, and with his high defense, he can probably stay up pretty well. Obviously, his high defense leads him into playing protection, and you guessed it, he comes with protection. So we have a new ally, Starhawk. 2 cost ally, 1 thwart, 2 attack, 2 consequential damage on the attack. Interrupt, and he has 3 health. When Starhawk takes damage exactly equal to his remaining hit points, return him to your hand. So if you can do the math correctly, so he doesn't take any overkill damage, he bounces back into your hand and can be a free resource or others to play him back out. So might be a little bit finagling, but could be worth it. We got some Desperate Defenses, classic card. You may see me play those on my Quicksilver protection deck. 3 copies of Fighting Fit, deal 2 damage to the villain, or 5 damage instead if your hero's remaining hit points are equal to or greater than your hero's starting hit points. So if you're at max health, or if you have more than your starting health, it does 5 damage, which, if you have ways to increase your health, definitely works. power of protection. We've seen these before. Dauntless. Max 1 per player. While your hero's remaining hit points are equal to or greater than your hero's starting hit points, your hero gains Retaliate 1. So anytime you defend or get hit, you can retaliate 1 damage back. That can be useful. But you have to have greater than or equal to your hero's starting hit points. So we'll have to see about that. It might be a bit tricky to get that to trigger all the time, but could be fun. 3 copies of Hard to Ignore. After your hero defends against an attack and takes no damage, exhaust Hard to Ignore, remove 1 threat from the main scheme. And there's no limit, so you could technically play all 3 of them out. And this is really good. As you may have seen in my Rise of the Red Skull campaign I played through, I do feel like that I was a bit lacking on removing threat in some bits. And this is similar to Unflappable, which draws you a card. This one, however, removes a threat from the main scheme. So this allows you to essentially have protection, still remove or help with dealing with the threat while doing what they should be doing, which is protecting. And we got some Indomitables, which are old cards. Okay, we got a new minion, new neutral ally, Rocket Raccoon. We saw Groot in the Rocket Raccoon pack. This one, similar, can only be played if your identity has the Guardian trait. So again, at the time of this discussion, only Groot can play him, because Rocket and Groot are the only Guardians currently in play. We do have been announced coming soon. Star-Lord, Gamora, Drax, and Venom are the 4 new ones. So we have a bunch of new Guardians that can play them, but as of this moment, only Groot can. 3 cost ally, 2 thwart, 1 attack. We saw something similar with the actual Rocket Raccoon hero, where he has a high thwart, 3 health. When Rocket Raccoon attacks a minion, he gets +3 attack for that attack, and that attack gains overkill. So that means when he attacks minions, he's doing 4 damage. So he can blow through minions, or he can essentially, so he can help you deal with minions basically, which is good because you don't want the minions to like chop away at your growth counters all the time. Flora and Fauna, which is the team up card. It has the same art from the box, and this is 1 cost as long as you have Rocket and Groot out. Place 2 growth counters on Groot and ready him, or place 2 charge counters on an upgrade for Rocket Raccoon and ready that upgrade. So in essence, for you it gives you 2 growth counters. For Raccoon, gives him 2 tech counters. And then we have Deft Focus, which is 1 per player. It's an upgrade. Exhaust Deft Focus. Reduce the resource cost of the next superpower card you play this turn by 1. Now, so let's look back at Groot's cards. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Almost every card except Fertile Ground is a superpower. So it reduces every card's cost by 1, except for 1 of them. I think Quicksilver also has a bunch of superpower cards, so this card is going to see a lot of play in some of these people that have powers. Definitely going to be a big card. Okay, let's look at the bad cards for Groot. His obligation is Wilt. with a rather like terrifying like odd picture. Same thing as always. Flip to alter ego, exhaust. Remove 3 growth counters from Groot. If no growth counters were removed this way, this card gains surge. Discard. So you lose 3 counters. Then we have Blazing Inferno as the side scheme. After the villain phase begins, deal 2 indirect damage to each player. Now, it's coming in with 3 per player. The interesting thing to note about this is 2 indirect damage to each player. If Groot doesn't have any allies, he has to take the 2 damage, which means that you essentially every turn are burning 2 counters off you every turn. Then you have the minion is Fronax, which looks like a giant spider of some sort. 2 scheme, 2 attack, 6 health. After Fronax activates, this is a forced response. Deal 2 indirect damage to each player. So again, just pumping us. First off, this can be really bad against Raccoon as well, who only has 9 health. Also, it's another 2 counters off of Groot if you don't have any way to deal with that. Then he has 3 cards of Fan the Flames. Take 2 indirect damage. If Blazing Inferno is in play, take 1 additional damage. And if Fronax is in play, take 1 additional damage. So if both the scheme and the minion are in play, this card does 4 indirect damage. That's rough. That's some like Green Goblin stuff in terms of like damage potential. So that's it for the Groot pack. What do we think? I actually think Groot is going to be really good. Like, I've been playing a lot of protection lately because of my Quicksilver deck and my Quicksilver campaign run. So I've been really digging the protection cards. And I feel like because of his ability to gain counters, his ability to boost himself up with some extra stuff, that he'll be quite easy to have his counters, to spend those counters on a bunch of his different upgrades. As long as he can keep himself protected and have those defense cards, and there's some good protection cards, I think he can definitely be a potent first. I definitely think he needs someone to either help with the thwarting, like a Raccoon, or someone, or maybe even damage. He does have damage cards, but I feel like, as we may have seen in Rocket Raccoon's video, where Rocket Raccoon has a bunch more AoE damage, I feel like Groot's damage is more precise, hitting like 4, 5 type of stuff. I'm excited to play Groot. I think Groot's going to be a lot of fun to play, and I have to try and track his counters on him and stuff. So I'm excited to play the new expansion, see how that runs. I've been hearing great things about the campaign. It's supposed to be another spike in difficulty. So with that, I hope it's going to be fun. Be sure to check out the Rocket Raccoon video I've done, as well as let me know in the comments down below what you guys think about Groot, what decks you may have played Groot in. I feel like he can be probably played, could probably play him in aggression, protection, maybe even leadership. Anybody can be played in leadership basically, but just to have him kind of have those bodies to help protect him, so he can kind of build up his counters and then use those counters to really go to town. But overall, I think he's going to be really fun to play. I cannot wait to play them. So thank you guys for watching, and I will check you guys out next time with another Marvel Champions video.